Good morning, everyone. So, I started this channel to talk about bias and censorship that I was seeing and how it was harming people's ability to access different perspectives and viewpoints and logical arguments. And I do think I've seen the situation improve or at least shift in the last year. I think with Trump being president and he got the popular vote. We're seeing a shift towards the country being more conservative. I think we are seeing a lot of news organizations be more cautious about the information they put out there. I know some people would see that as a bad thing of like, oh, they're being muzzled. They should be able to say what they need to say. I think they're still saying it. I think they're just being more cautious about it. The problem that I'm seeing now is that the larger point of being able to have access to a wide range of viewpoints is having the ability to change your mind if you see new information. And I don't think I'm really seeing very much of that. I think the country's very divided and people are pretty set in their views. I do want to clarify that when I say changing your mind, I don't necessarily mean doing a 180, like changing sides or whatever. I think even just a refinement of your own views is a form of changing your mind. For instance, if you're anti-illegal immigration, but you learn what the cost would be of deporting every single illegal immigrant, and you start to refine your views to say like, okay, what would be a sensible solution? That is you changing your mind, at least modifying your views. And I've been kind of thinking like, why aren't we doing this? What's the problem? And there are two things in particular that I've noticed that I want to talk about. And the first one was brought to my attention by a friend of mine where she sent me an Instagram post, and the person in the post was talking about how when we hear views that we disagree with, we tend to feel threatened. And we need to stop feeling threatened in order to listen and modify our views. And I had some very conflicted feelings about that post, because in one sense I was like, yeah, she's right. And in another sense, I felt kind of indignant and insulted, because I think sometimes it is legitimate to feel threatened. I mean, look, if people are losing their jobs because they're voicing their views, if they are losing scholarships, if they are hurting their future career prospects by speaking up publicly, it is right to feel threatened. Like, yes, I don't think there's a lot of actual physical violence, but feeling threatened is more about just like immediate threats to your life. It's also about recognizing where your future could become compromised by how you're behaving in that moment. Another thing that I think almost everyone experiences is the idea of losing relationships because of speaking out about your views. I think when some people disagree with me, they do it very respectfully and tactfully and thoughtfully, and those actually turn into very fun discussions. But I have also had people disagree with me that it turns into a character assassination of saying like, people who think like this are lacking compassion, or they're stupid, they're fascist. I mean, I'm sure you guys all know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you've seen it yourself. And I think there is also this element of, if someone is disagreeing with you, but they are still seeing you and your humanity and your friendship and you beyond that view, that's okay. When someone is reducing you to that view and saying, I cannot talk to you, I cannot be around you, I'm shutting off my association with you because of that view, I'm not going to entertain it, I'm not going to explore it and maybe like help figure out where this disconnect is, then I don't want to do it, I don't want people coming in and just insulting me as a person. And so that is something that I've really tried to do on this channel and with my online interactions, is not acting accusatory or judgmental towards people who disagree with me, and really encouraging thoughtful discussions and different perspectives and listening to one another as long as we are being thoughtful and respectful. And that is something that I would like to encourage other people to do, because many people do it, but many people don't. And as long as we have the people that don't, I think that is inhibiting our ability to actually move upwards as opposed to just forwards, of actually like figuring out a better way to be living our lives and running this country. And the other thing I want to talk about is changing your own thinking, because I think there is often a sense of your identity just getting very intertwined with what your beliefs are, particularly when you speak about it publicly or even just out loud. There is research to support this idea that once you speak something aloud, you pretty much tied yourself to it and you begin to really strongly associate with it and look for evidence to defend that. And I think it's a hard thing to combat, particularly because it's hard to get access to information if you're not doing this. One quote I know is like, the surest way to find out if you're wrong is to say what you think. You know, like, you need to have those discussions, but then once you start talking about that, how do you reconsider your own ideas? And one idea that I've seen that I think is really cool is something that Peter Boghossian's done on he has a YouTube series called Spectrum Street Epistemology. And what he does is he names a claim. Well, let's just say, for example, Marxism is bad for America. And then you can place yourself on the spectrum of a whole range of feelings about it, from strongly agree to strongly disagree. There's strongly agree, slightly agree, neutral, and then the same spectrum for disagree. And after you do that and you explain what your reasoning is, he'll ask people, what would it take to move you one square to the left or the right? So like, if you say like, oh, I agree, Marxism is bad for America, to think about what information could you get that would move you from I agree with this to I slightly agree with this, or I strongly agree with this. For instance, if you saw another country that implemented Marxism and became more successful, would that move you? If you saw other countries with Marxism and they were successful, and then you realized that their success came from incorporating free market principles, would that move you in the other direction? And I think it really gets you to think about the fact that the information you have access to is not all the information that's out there. And I don't just mean that like you need to do more research. I mean, in some cases, the research hasn't been done yet. So if you make up your mind based on the best available research and statistics, and then new research comes out, or let's say another country is kind of like a live experiment, they're implementing this idea that you think is a good idea, and over the years you see it not turn out well, you should be able to modify your views, but it's very hard for almost anyone to do that. But yeah, I think it's a useful tool to have in your back pocket. It is very hard for me to do, and that is as someone who is really trying and making the effort to seek out these other perspectives. I think for a lot of people, it's not going to be easy, but I think it's worth trying out. And those were the two main things. But to close out, just one other thing that I want to mention is the notion of being a flip-flopper and how that is typically seen as bad in politics. And I know like some people will say like, oh, well, it's one thing to change your views because you actually get access to new information, but this politician is just doing it to get votes, and they'll just say whatever they have to say to like get the votes. And I mean, honestly, who knows? We have no way of actually knowing what is in another person's head, particularly politicians who have a very public persona. But generally speaking, I would just encourage you, if you see a person changing their minds, to just recognize that that is part of the human condition. All right, that's all. I'd love to hear if you guys have any ideas on how we can get better at actually being amenable to changing our own minds and changing other people's minds. So that's all for this morning. Thank you. Bye.